There are 5 nutrients your nerves need to begin recovering from neuropathy, 5 specific compounds. And the research on them is some of the most compelling I've seen in decades of working with patients over 60. But here's the problem. Most people with neuropathy are either missing all 5 of them or taking the wrong forms. And that difference between the right form and the wrong form is the difference between nerve support that actually reaches damaged tissue and an expensive supplement that does almost nothing. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share goes far deeper than any list you've seen before. I want to start by talking about why so many people with neuropathy have tried B12, tried magnesium, tried vitamin D, and felt nothing. They did the right thing. They went to the health food store. They read the labels. They took the supplements faithfully. And the burning didn't stop. The tingling continued. The nights were still miserable. And they concluded, reasonably, that supplements don't work for neuropathy. But here's what nobody told them. The form matters more than the nutrient itself. There is a version of B12 that your nerve cells can actually use, and a version that passes through your body almost untouched. There is a form of vitamin B1 that penetrates nerve tissue directly, and a standard form that barely crosses the membrane. The nutrients are real. The research is real. The problem is that most products use the cheapest, least effective versions of every single one of these compounds. And the people who need them most, people over 60, people with diabetic neuropathy, people who've been on metformin for years, are the ones whose bodies are least equipped to convert those cheap forms into anything useful. That's what this video is really about. Not just which 5 nutrients, but why most people are taking the wrong versions of them. And what happens when you finally give your nervous system what it's actually been missing. Let me describe something first, because I want to make sure I'm talking to the right person. You probably have a sensation in your feet or your hands that you've been trying to describe to doctors for years, and they've never quite gotten it. It's not exactly pain. It's more like heat, like your feet are standing on warm pavement, even when you're lying in bed. Or it's a buzzing, a low-level electrical hum that's always there, always slightly wrong, always interrupting your sleep just when you were finally getting comfortable. Some of my patients describe it as wearing socks that aren't there, a persistent, maddening wrongness in the sensation of their own skin. And then there are the shocks, sudden, sharp, completely unpredictable stabs of pain that come from nowhere and leave just as fast. You could be sitting still, you could be sleeping, and your foot fires a signal that wakes you like a bolt of electricity. If you've been telling your doctor about this for months or years and you've been told that's what neuropathy feels like, or let's adjust your gabapentin dose, I want you to understand something. That response is not acceptable, and it is not the end of the road. In my years working with patients over 60, I've watched what happens when neuropathy is left unaddressed. I've seen it follow a pattern so consistent that I can almost predict the timeline. It starts in the toes, a slight tingling that people dismiss for months. Then the tingling becomes numbness. The numbness climbs. People stop feeling the floor properly. They start touching the walls when they walk. They slow down on stairs. Their balance becomes unreliable. And this is where it stops being a nuisance and starts being genuinely dangerous. Falls in adults over 65 with neuropathy are one of the leading causes of serious injury and death. Not because of the fall itself, but because the combination of numbness, balance loss, and slowed reflexes means there's no catching yourself. There's no warning. One moment you're walking to the bathroom at night, the next you're on the floor. I've watched patients go from tingling feet to a walker in 3 years. I've watched the progression happen faster in people who were given nothing but gabapentin and told to come back in 6 months. I am not telling you this to frighten you. I am telling you this because the window to support nerve recovery is real, and it is not permanent. The longer this goes unaddressed, the more extensive the damage becomes. And here's what most doctors won't say in a 10-minute appointment. Nerve tissue can respond to the right nutritional environment. It is not as fragile and irreversible as we were once taught, but it needs specific support, specific compounds, in the right forms. And most people with neuropathy have never received them. If what I'm sharing today is new to you, and I suspect it is, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I release critical health information for people over 60 every week. Information your doctor may not have time to share in a routine appointment. Hit the subscribe button below. It costs nothing. And it could be one of the most important health decisions you make today. Now let me explain what's actually happening inside your nerves. Because once you understand the mechanism, the 5 nutrients will make complete sense. and you'll understand immediately why the forms matter so much. Think about the wiring in your house. Every electrical cable has two things: the conducting wire at the center and the insulating sheath that surrounds it. Without the insulation, the electrical signal leaks. It misfires. It shorts out. Your peripheral nerves are structured exactly the same way. The conducting core carries electrochemical signals. The protective sheath, called myelin, insulates the signal and allows it to travel at full speed with full accuracy. When myelin degrades, signals leak, they misfire, they arrive distorted or not at all, and you feel that degradation as tingling, burning, numbness, and pain. Here's the first layer of the problem. Myelin production requires specific raw materials. Chief among them is a particular form of vitamin B12, not just any B12, the methylated form, methylcobalamin, which can cross directly into nerve tissue. Standard cyanocobalamin, the cheap synthetic form found in most multivitamins and even many dedicated B12 supplements, requires a conversion process that becomes dramatically less efficient after the age of 60. For people on metformin, that conversion is blocked even further. Research has consistently shown that metformin reduces B12 levels in long-term users by blocking its absorption in the gut, often without any warning to the patient. The result is a slow, silent depletion of the exact nutrient the myelin sheath needs most to survive. And this is where the research gets really surprising. Studies have shown that a significant percentage of adults over 60 are deficient in B12, even if their blood levels look normal by conventional standards. The standard blood test measures total B12 in the bloodstream, but what your nerves need is active B12 inside nerve tissue. Those are two very different things. A patient can have acceptable serum B12 and still be profoundly deficient at the cellular level where it actually matters. That is layer one. But there are more layers. And here's what makes this even more serious. Because the second layer of nerve damage is happening simultaneously, and most people have no idea. Your nerve cells are among the most metabolically active cells in your body. They run constantly, 24 hours a day, signaling, firing, maintaining. That metabolic activity produces oxidative stress as a byproduct. Free radicals that accumulate inside nerve tissue. Your body has a system for neutralizing those free radicals. At the center of that system is a compound called alpha-lipoic acid. ALA is a mitochondrial antioxidant, meaning it works inside the energy-producing machinery of cells, where standard antioxidants like vitamin C or E cannot reach. Researchers have studied alpha-lipoic acid specifically for peripheral nerve support, and the results are among the most consistent in the natural medicine literature. But here's the critical point. ALA production in the body declines significantly with age. By the time someone is in their late 60s, their natural production of this essential nerve antioxidant may be a fraction of what it was at 40. Meanwhile, decades of accumulated oxidative damage in the nervous system is reaching a tipping point. The nerve tissue is running low on its primary line of defense, exactly when it needs it most. Researchers at institutions, including the German Diabetes Research Institute, have published findings on alpha-lipoic acid and peripheral nerve health that most practitioners in the medical community have largely overlooked. What they found was that consistent ALA support was associated with meaningful improvements in nerve function parameters, not as a cure, but as genuine nutritional support for tissue that had been biochemically depleted for years. That research exists, it is published, but it rarely makes it from the academic literature into the 10-minute appointment with a general practitioner. And that gap between what the research shows and what patients are told is where millions of people with neuropathy are falling through. I had a patient, I'll call him Richard, 71 years old, type 2 diabetic for 14 years. He came to me after being on gabapentin for 3 years with minimal improvement. He described the burning in his feet as getting progressively worse despite the medication. He was sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night. He had stopped walking his dog in the morning because he didn't trust his balance on uneven ground. His doctor had told him this was simply the progression of his disease. When we reviewed what Richard had been taking, a standard multivitamin with cyanocobalamin B12, nothing for oxidative nerve support, no specialized B vitamin complex, the picture was immediately clear. He had been supplementing, in theory, but not with the compounds his nerve tissue actually required. Within months of addressing those specific deficiencies with the correct forms of the right nutrients, Richard told me he had his first full night of sleep in over 2 years. years. I'm not telling you that to promise you the same result. I'm telling you because Richard's case is not unusual. I've seen versions of it dozens of times. And what it shows is how profoundly the right nutritional support can matter when it actually reaches the tissue that needs it. This is what neuropathy takes from people that the medical system rarely acknowledges. It isn't just the pain, it's the life that gets gradually surrendered around the pain. Sleep is the first thing to go. Not sleeping means not recovering. Not recovering means the next day is harder. Harder days mean less activity. Less activity means more decline. The spiral is real, and it moves faster than most people realize. And then there's the social dimension. The person who used to be the one who organized the family dinners, who took the grandchildren to the park, who danced at weddings, who walked on the beach in the evening. That person starts quietly shrinking their world, not because they want to, but because every environment outside their home feels like a risk, a fall in a parking lot, an uneven curb, a crowded room where there's nothing to hold on to. The independence that defines who they are starts to feel conditional. And with that comes something the medical charts never capture: a quiet grief, a private mourning for a version of yourself that seems to be receding. This isn't just about nerve pain. This affects everything: your sleep, your confidence, your relationship with your own body, your sense of who you are and what you're still capable of. And the thing that makes it most painful is that most people with neuropathy were never told there were specific biological factors driving this. Factors that could be addressed. They were told it's progressive. They were told it's the price of aging or of diabetes. They were told to manage the symptoms and accept the rest. That is not good enough. And it does not reflect what the research actually shows. The link in the description below takes you directly to the natural nerve support formula I recommend to my patients. It combines everything I've covered today in the specific forms that actually reach nerve tissue. Take a look when you have a moment. I think it will make a lot of sense after what you just learned. Now let me complete the picture, because we've covered methylcobalamin, B12, and alpha-lipoic acid. But 3 more nutrients complete what I consider the essential foundation for nerve support. The third is acetyl L-carnitine. This is an amino acid compound, and its role in nerve health is one that most people have never heard of. Every cell in your body requires energy to function. Nerve cells, which run continuously, are particularly energy dependent. Acetyl L-carnitine facilitates the transport of fatty acids into the mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside cells, where those fatty acids are converted into usable fuel. When levels of acetyl L-carnitine are adequate, nerve cells have the metabolic resources they need for maintenance and repair. When levels are low, as they commonly are in adults over 60 and in people with long-term diabetes, nerve cells are essentially trying to run on a depleted battery. They can still fire, they can still function minimally, but the capacity for restoration and repair is compromised. Clinical research on acetyl L-carnitine and peripheral nerve support has been conducted across multiple countries and multiple patient populations. What the studies consistently show is that this compound plays a meaningful role in supporting the metabolic environment that nerve repair requires. The fourth nutrient is vitamin D3, and here's what makes this one particularly important. Most people think of vitamin D as a bone nutrient. They don't know that receptors for vitamin D exist throughout the nervous system, including in peripheral nerve tissue. Emerging research has identified a direct relationship between vitamin D status and nerve sensitivity and pain levels. What researchers have observed is that low vitamin D is associated with heightened nerve hypersensitivity, meaning that deficiency may be directly amplifying the pain signals people with neuropathy are already experiencing. The majority of adults over 60 are vitamin D deficient, and this deficiency deepens significantly during winter months and in people who spend limited time outdoors. For someone already dealing with neuropathy, this represents an additional, largely overlooked contributor to their symptoms that is straightforward to address. The fifth is a compound called benfotiamine, the fat-soluble form of vitamin B1. Standard thiamine, the water-soluble form found in most supplements, has very limited ability to cross into nerve tissue. Benfotiamine penetrates the lipid membrane of nerve cells far more effectively, making it biologically available where it needs to act. Researchers in European clinical settings have studied benfotiamine for decades, specifically in the context of nerve protection from glucose-related damage. For anyone whose neuropathy is connected to elevated blood sugar, whether diagnosed diabetic or not, because prediabetes affects nerve tissue before most doctors even flag it, benfotiamine represents a targeted intervention that standard B1 simply cannot replicate. And the sixth, Magnesium. Magnesium is involved in over 300 biological processes, including the precise regulation of nerve signal transmission. It works at the level of calcium channels in nerve cells, moderating the electrical excitability that drives pain signals. Chronic magnesium deficiency, which affects the majority of adults over 60 due to decreased absorption and often inadequate dietary intake, is directly associated with heightened neuromuscular reactivity and increased nerve pain. Addressing that deficiency is not a peripheral concern. It is foundational to any serious approach to nerve support. Now, finding each of these compounds separately, in the right forms, at the right doses, in combinations that actually work together, is genuinely difficult. Most people over 60 don't have the time or the biochemical background to navigate that. That's exactly why I've left a link in the description to a formula that brings all of this together in the forms I've described. I've reviewed it carefully, and it's one of the very few options I feel comfortable recommending to my patients. I want to address something directly. You may be wondering why your doctor has never talked to you about any of this. I want to be clear. Most physicians are not hiding this information. The issue is structural. Medical training focuses overwhelmingly on pharmacological interventions, nutritional biochemistry, how specific forms of micronutrients interact with nerve tissue, receives minimal training time in most medical programs. And in a system where the average appointment lasts less than 10 minutes, even physicians who are aware of the research rarely have the time or the framework to translate it into practical patient guidance. The result is that millions of people over 60 are suffering from something that has real researched biological solutions, and they're leaving appointments with prescriptions for drugs that manage symptoms while the underlying nutritional deficiencies continue uncorrected. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a system problem, and the result is that people like you are left trying to figure it out on your own, which is exactly why conversations like this one matter. You are not powerless here. That is the most important thing I can leave you with. The burning in your feet, the tingling that wakes you at night, the balance that you no longer trust completely. These are not just the inevitable price of getting older. They are signs of a nervous system that has been nutritionally depleted over time. And a depleted system can be supported. The research on this is real. The mechanisms are understood. What was missing was the translation. Someone telling you clearly what your nerves actually need and why most approaches fall short. The 5 nutrients I described today, methylcobalamin B12, alpha-lipoic acid, acetyl L-carnitine, vitamin D3, benfotiamine, and magnesium, represent the most well-researched nutritional foundation for peripheral nerve support that exists, not as a cure, as support for a biological system that has been running on empty. And the difference between taking these compounds in the right forms versus the cheap standard versions, that difference is everything. If today's video opened your eyes to something important, share it with someone you care about, because there are millions of people over 60 dealing with this silently, and they don't have to. The link in the description goes directly to the natural formula I recommend. Take a look when you have a quiet moment. Subscribe for more critical health information every week and leave a comment below. What was the most surprising thing you learned today? I read every single one.